10 minutes. Explain training in 10 minutes. That's the goal. So time me. This is Bustthenet. My name is Daljit. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to stay in touch for more videos like this. I will skip things like how to get 5-star coaches and what specific attributes coaches work on. You can find all that information in a written guide on the forums called the Unofficially Official Training Guide for FM19. Yes, that guide is still relevant. Training in FM20 is a lot more fun than before because now you have more control. The biggest change is actually the range of options you now have for individual focus training. Along with specific goalkeeper focuses, we now have even more categories than before. We also have 3 new training sessions. Yes, and crossing is finally in. I don't know if you encountered this in FM19, I certainly did. If you wanted to improve a defender's crossing, he had to be moved into the attacking unit. This wasn't ideal because it affected the development of other defensive attributes and also had a knock-on effect on mentoring. If you recall, the ideal mentoring setup would be to have a senior player high up in the hierarchy of a club, ideally with a significant influence mentoring players who played in the same position. This implied that they would be working in the same unit. Transferring a fullback to an attacking unit would move him out of that unit. This didn't break mentoring, but it took a lot longer to mentor a fullback unless all the fullbacks were training together and hanging out after the game. FM20 changes things. What about team training? We now have 3 new training sessions added to the game: attacking overlap training, defend from the front, and play out from the back. Football rules have changed, allowing goalkeepers to pass the ball to players inside the 18-yard box in dead ball situations. To help teams master that art, you may want to ask your players to devote some time to playing out from the back. Defend from the front is a new session that helps teams who like to play a high pressing game. These improve attributes that help attacking units master the art of being the first line of defense. Overlap training is a fantastic session I recommend you add to any attacking session. Now your fullbacks get the benefit of offensive attributes that help them with the crossing game. So how do you set training up? On today's show, I'll explain how I set a training schedule up, and I'll break down the why and how schedules should change as the season progresses. Different leagues have different kinds of seasons. Some have breaks, some are long, some are short. The principles are the same across all of them. You have an early part of the season and a later part of the season. In the early part, players get fatigued more easily. In the latter part of the season, the matches pile up and they can easily get jaded or injured. So you need to account for this. When you take over a new team, they might need some time to gel, which means they take time to understand any tactic you create. To find out how they are gelling, check the dynamics page for team cohesion. The early part of a season then becomes focused on getting them familiar with tactics and working on fitness. If you only use one tactic and you don't rotate a squad starting from preseason right into the first 2 months of the season, then your team will become tactically familiar very fast. However, this isn't realistic, as we want as many players familiar with the tactic as possible. So depending on your situation, familiarity can take between 2 to 4 months. If you're taking longer than that, you need to consider making adjustments to your training sessions. There are several kinds of training sessions: general ones which give attribute growth and tactical familiarity, more specific ones which do not affect tactical familiarity, and specific role sessions. In preseason, you want to include sessions that work on improving fitness, such as physical endurance or quickness. I will also use more of the blue sessions that work on tactical familiarity, or some of the other sessions that include tactical familiarity elements. Ideally, you want to hit every tactical familiarity area in preseason. This means you want your team to get used to pressing intensity, marking, passing style, tempo, creative freedom, mentality, width, position, and role and duty. There are a few ways you can do this. As long as your schedules have tactical familiarity elements, you should be fine. You could go for one that has a different focus each week, or you could create a more general schedule that covers all areas. I do tend to be a bit more aggressive with physical sessions and tend to dial these down if I play a lot of matches in preseason. Once preseason is over, you can move to schedules that are lighter. Once again, you could opt to use one schedule or a combination of a few different ones. The choice is entirely yours. The idea here is to gain tactical familiarity quickly. Using different ones could be useful if you have a team that needs specific work done in certain areas. One example, a side expected to struggle may want to focus on work rate, stamina, acceleration, and defensive attributes. If there's fixture congestion because you're playing 2 games a week, I recommend dropping physical sessions since the team is already playing so many games. Instead, I could focus more on match preparation activities since these aren't nearly as intensive as other sessions. Once the season is underway, you can start incorporating match preparation activities to give your team a bit of a bonus for upcoming matches. And once team familiarity is reached, you can remove the general sessions and use more specific sessions for more focused development. Intensity is something we need to understand. A player's workload cannot be too light and it cannot be too heavy. You can track these from the training page or create your own views. Ideally, you also want to check the medical center to see if players are more prone to injury than others. Why is this important? Each player has his own individual workload. You can dial up the intensity or dial it down simply by having more sessions in a week, adding individual focused training or adding player trait training. You want individual workloads to be medium or heavy, but never very high or very light. Very light is acceptable during periods of fixture congestion to avoid injuries, but not for the majority of the season. An unfit player is also likely to pick up injuries. We've covered team training. Now it's time to look at individual focus training. This is a chance for you to strengthen weak areas of your team. Perhaps you're a team that needs improvement in physical attributes. You can ask your players to spend extra time working on these areas. With more attributes being covered in individual focus training in FM20, we finally have more control over training. This has been a step in the right direction. Now it's time to evaluate how your players are doing. The Development Center will give you reports on top performing and poor performing players. You can also use these reports and interact with players to praise them or give them a kick up the arse. You can also create your own custom views if you're a micromanager like me. Both approaches work. In fact, you could become one who uses custom views and the Development Center for a quick overview. I expect that to be the major direction most people take this. Don't forget how your team does in training is a function of your performances on the pitch, the quality of your coaches, and your facilities. So you need to be improving these as time goes by. Which approach is the best? There are basically 3 approaches. The micromanagement approach is probably the best because you can get very focused development, but it's time consuming. A general approach also works well. You can accept the training sessions that your assistant manager produces and elect to make weekly changes based on what you think is important. Here you could also leave individual focus to the assistant manager. Finally, the hybrid approach of leaving general training to your assistant manager with you making occasional changes but still having absolute control over individual focus training. Now, this could probably be the best approach for the majority of people playing the game. Thanks for watching the show. I hope I managed to keep it down to 10 minutes. If you liked it, hit the like button, drop a comment if there are other areas you need covered, and I'll do my very best to do a show on that. You can always find me in the usual places, and I want to thank everyone for supporting the show. You guys are absolutely fantastic. Take care, catch you later, and don't forget to drop by, say hi on one of my Twitch streams. Yes, that's also Bustthenet. So, yeah, I'm that original. Okay, you guys take care. Have a good one. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.